I've received quite a few requests to provide an update to the Ben Schneider case. In my first video about the case, I really focused on Ben himself, his career, what he did in this incident with bricks and minifigs. But a lot of people had questions about the American Fork Police Department and about what the entities on the franchise side may have done wrong or how they contributed. So bricks and minifigs corporate and the old franchisees and the new franchisees. The story has a lot of moving parts. So I thought that I would take the opportunity to update the video and kind of focus more on some of those other elements, but I will include a discussion of Ben Schneider because he's kind of important to the story. There's really no way to escape that. I think the best way to provide the update here is to take on a more informal style, so I'll be going through this in kind of a different format than I usually use. This is an interesting case. This is really a business dispute. It's curious in a few different ways. It's really not a traditional large crime type case. Like I cover a lot of cases that involve homicide or millions of dollars in fraud or somebody going missing. I cover aviation disasters, maritime disasters, theme park disasters, pop culture incidents that involve like embarrassing maneuvers or whatever. This is not necessarily in a category of its own, but it is somewhat unusual. Again, no major crime was alleged in this case. Some misdemeanors and such, but nothing really serious, certainly nothing like homicide. It's really about a business dispute and how a social media influencer became involved in that dispute, and it touches on freedom of speech, civil rights violations, alleged defamation, all kinds of things. So it kind of started, I think, in a benign way, like humble beginnings, kind of again, just a dispute about some Lego sets and a consignment agreement, and it's grown into something else. So it's really, I think, governed by reactions. This case is largely about how people reacted to being confronted about various allegations. I think it's actually much more about that than it is about the original situation. So I'll run through the scenario, like what the dispute is, and then take a look at the blame that might be assigned to various parties and some other elements about the behavior here. So looking at this case, the original case dealt with a business dispute. No social media influencers were involved in the beginning, and there was no real police involvement. The police were contacted one time, but nothing really happened. This was a civil matter, just two business entities having a problem with each other. The first entity I'll talk about is Bricks and Minifigs. This is a company that buys and resells Lego bricks. That's what they do. They're based in Utah, and they are franchised. Now, franchising is a marketing and distribution system. Very few companies are actually in the franchising industry itself, like helping companies to franchise. Most are businesses that do something else, and they use franchising as their method to market. So this can be automotive repair, fast food, a lot of those chains are franchised. It can be cleaning services, accounting services. All kinds of companies can use franchising as their method to grow and to deliver services to the public or whoever they serve. So Bricks and Minifigs is a franchisor. Sometimes they're referred to as BAM or BAM. So I'll use probably BAM most of the time here. So BAM is a franchisor based in Utah, and they have over 300 franchised stores. So the individual owners of the stores are called franchisees. And essentially they pay an initial fee and an ongoing royalty, which I think might be 6%. And that gives them access to the trademarks, the system, all the marketing, whatever. So the secret sauce, that's the whole idea. It's a good deal in theory for a franchisee because, yeah, they're paying this royalty, but then they get this system that they can use. They're plugged in. It's a business in a box. Now, whether that's true really depends on the franchisor and the abilities of the franchisee. Some franchises, I think, are good deals. Others, I don't really feel like the secret sauce is that secret. With BAM, I kind of lean toward that latter conceptualization. They resell Lego sets. They're not really making anything that I know of. They're not manufacturing something special that you can only get from BAM. But either way, it's still legitimate in the sense that franchising is an accepted model, and that's how they grow. So that's how they run their business. Most of the stores were run by franchisees. One of these stores was in Salem, Oregon. It was operated by two franchisees, Crystal Law and Ben Gorman, not to be confused with Ben Schneider, who I'll talk about in a moment. A man named Brian Mansell had collected a lot of Lego sets over the years with his father, and he went to the store in Salem, Oregon to sell them. This was in November 2023. He entered into a consignment agreement. So the store would sell his collection and pay him 65% of the price. So pretty straightforward. Now, BAM says that the store didn't have permission to enter into consignment agreements because that's forbidden in their franchise operations manual. So everything, pretty much every allegation you can think of in this case has been disputed. That's what they're saying. They also accused Crystal of underreporting sales, keeping multiple records, and all this. So it gets pretty nasty, essentially. Either way, the consignment agreement was functioning with Crystal and Brian. In October 2024, Crystal notified BAM, again, the franchisor, that she wanted to close the store. Her partner was offered a job out of the country. According to BAM, she owed $200,000 in royalties. They told her this would be waived if she handed over the store smoothly. She never mentioned anything about a consignment agreement. Again, this is what BAM is saying. On November 14, 2024, Brandon Best showed up at the store to handle the takeover. He and a man named Joshua Johnson would be the new franchisees for that store. According to BAM, Crystal was uncooperative. Crystal mentioned consignment. This was captured in a now famous video clip, like a surveillance video from inside the store. BAM implied that the company would take care of the consignment agreement, but the company would later say this was the first time they'd ever heard that mentioned. They also said that Crystal only shared a small part of the video, something to keep in mind. After the takeover of the store, Brian Mansell, the guy with the Lego collection, allegedly had trouble getting a hold of Crystal. This is according to BAM. He went into the store, and there he encountered, of course, the new franchisees. And allegedly, they showed him around the store, and he could not identify any Lego sets that belonged to him. There are many stories here, but essentially, Brian is saying that there were Lego sets that he wanted back, or the money for them. And the new franchisees were saying there were none, and then later there might be a few, but nothing like the original claim. Which, by the way, the original amount of all these Legos was supposedly $200,000, but now it's come to light it's probably closer to $90,000 to $100,000. So 780 sets were involved and some minifigures as well. The bottom line here is that Brian was not satisfied with the outcome. He wasn't happy with the money he received. He thought that he got ripped off. He contacted many people and talked about the problem he had, and this is where Ben Schneider becomes involved. Ben had a large YouTube channel, it's even larger now, and he was handling situations kind of like this, getting involved in investigative journalism. So he inserts himself into the case, and he uses his propensity for stunts and drama, and he wages this unusual and irritating war against the franchisor, BAM, and the new franchisees, Joshua and Brandon. Essentially, he went to the store in Salem, Oregon, then he went to Utah, and he encountered a lot of people and made demands like he wanted the Lego sets back. So we enter into this area where he starts trying to serve legal paperwork. The legitimacy of the paperwork is disputed. It appears as though it was actually a real lawsuit now, but there are all kinds of accusations going in different directions. So the police responded. They trespassed him. He visited a few places. He ended up getting trespassed multiple times. Then he sent his associates to, like, Joshua's house and he ended up being arrested for a few crimes, including stalking. So essentially, Ben was using others to allegedly stalk. That's why Ben was arrested. During all this, the police behaved in a way that I referred to in my first video as biased and heavy-handed, and I stand by that assessment. I don't think the police performed very well here. Now, Ben was doing some things wrong too, allegedly. It's important to keep that in mind. But the police, I think, did violate his civil rights. I think he has a decent case there. When looking at the unredacted body cam video that is now available, that comes into a clearer focus. I'll talk more about that in a moment. On June 4, 2026, the Salem, Oregon store permanently closed due to what BAM called an online disparagement campaign that was spearheaded by Ben Schneider. Joshua and Brandon are no longer associated with BAM, so they have nothing to do with Bricks and Minifigs anymore. BAM is suing multiple parties, including Ben Schneider. So now kind of looking at the potential culpability of the parties here. What did the police do wrong? When looking at the unredacted body camera video and some of the other sources, we see a few things that kind of worry me here. The police searched a vehicle that Ben was riding in, looking for drugs. They didn't find any. Supposedly, the search was based on a dog alerting to an odor of illicit substances in the vehicle. So all this was based on a dog's behavior. I've talked in the past about how relying on the behavior of dogs may not be the best strategy when looking at these types of cases. They obtained a search warrant for an Airbnb where Ben Schneider and his friends were staying. And as part of that search warrant, they were looking for Lego bricks. They were also looking to arrest him for an additional stalking charge. But they wanted to see if he had stolen Lego bricks, and allegedly they heard someone say that the people in the house had mentioned stolen Lego bricks. This kind of makes sense because they were talking about their allegations of BAM taking Lego bricks. So maybe that's what the person heard. It's not really clear. Either way, they had a search warrant signed by a judge. They went in and they used a lot of force. Like, it seemed unnecessary. Also, in the unredacted body cam video, they appeared to be highly interested in Ben or his associates video recording them. I found that to be particularly odd. Why would they care? They're wearing body cameras, so they know it's going to be recorded. The whole incident would be captured anyway, but they didn't want to be recorded by the people in the house. I think something else that we see in the unredacted video is a real clear bias by the police. When they were talking to each other, they were really trying to figure out some way to place Ben under arrest. They were really just going through all the options and looking for any little thing he could have done. Again, Ben was saying he was trying to serve paperwork. He was wearing out the welcome mat. He did some things that aggravated the police, like orchestrating a fake UPS delivery man in order to allegedly forge a contract which would allow Ben to trespass on Joshua's property. Kind of convoluted, but the police had a reason to be curious about his activity, but they seemed really biased. They really wanted to get him. And that's, I think, something that Ben can bring up and maybe get some traction on. One other worrisome component with the police would be this idea that they were redacting content from the body cam video, supposedly because it contained, I guess, alleged victim information or something sensitive. But then when looking at the unredacted versions of the videos, there was nothing in there that needed to be redacted. So again, they don't like to be recorded, and they don't like to release the body cam video, at least some of it, that captured their behavior. It really kind of makes me nervous when the police are trying to conceal their behavior. That's not really how it should work. So Ben has a few good points there. Moving to BAM, Bricks and Minifigures Corporate, the franchisor. What did they do wrong here? Well, again, we see a lot of allegations. So they would go something like, they mishandled the transition to the new franchisees. They failed to account for Brian Mansell's consigned Lego collection. They refused to compensate him. They were very impolite throughout Ben Schneider's interactions with them, like really unnecessarily nasty. And they tried to silence Ben through lawsuits and takedown demands, like trying to get his Patreon account taken down. What does his Patreon account have to do with all this other activity? That really seemed particularly vindictive. Now, of course, BAM is saying they didn't do anything wrong. And that's kind of a common chorus that you'll hear from many of the parties involved in this case. Now, what about the original franchisees? Did they play a part in this? Again, this would be Crystal Law and her partner, Ben Gorman, not to be confused with Ben Schneider. So Ben Schneider really hasn't said much about them. Like, he's not going after them. The accusations against them come from BAM. So allegedly, these franchisees entered into an unauthorized consignment agreement. There were problems with records and a failure to maintain clear records. And there may have been multiple sets of records. Again, it's worth noting that Ben Schneider is aligned with these two. So I find this kind of a bit strange. Like, if he's trying to figure out what happened to Brian Mansell's Lego collection, why not kind of look at everyone? Why not just be more adversarial and say, well, I believe Brian, if there was evidence to suggest he was telling the truth, I believe Brian, and now I'm going to look and see who did bad things to him. And somehow we see that Crystal Law and Ben Gorman are kind of excluded from that. Ben Schneider is really not going after them. He's focusing on BAM and the new franchisees, Joshua and Brandon, who, again, are not associated with the company anymore. So Crystal and her partner received a pass from Ben. What about the new franchisees? What about Joshua and Brandon? What did they do? They took over the store and kind of were pushed into all this. They did not enter the original consignment agreement. Here we see accusations. There's this idea that they denied responsibility for the consignment agreement. They said they were not involved, which, again, was actually true. They were allegedly evasive or inconsistent about whether any of the consigned Lego sets remained in the store. And this is a common allegation here. They were impolite. They called the police on Ben, although it is worth noting he was allegedly harassing them. Something to keep in mind. Now moving to Ben Schneider. What did he do wrong? I covered this thoroughly in my first video, so I'll just offer a quick recap here. Again, these are only allegations. He repeatedly visited people at their homes and made them uncomfortable, using unusual tactics and being a bit deceptive. He directed third parties to contact Joshua. He planned to forge a contract. He defamed BAM. He also interfered with their operations, was a nuisance, stalked them, and conspired with other people to harm their business. Again, all allegations. So what's interesting about Ben Schneider here is that the civil problems are not among his only difficulties. He's also facing misdemeanor criminal charges. So he has, in a sense, more at stake. Maybe not necessarily monetarily, because I don't know that he has a lot of money, whereas BAM, of course, in theory would. But as far as criminal liability, that's something that is unique to him in this case. When trying to untangle this mess of disputed claims, accusations, and social media stunts, it is difficult to know who is to blame. A lot of people are very confident. They know, in theory, they're claiming, they know who is wrong. But I don't think there's enough evidence to know that yet. There's this sense that until this case is tested in court, nobody will really know what happened. Sure, there are bits and pieces. There are video, there are recorded phone calls, things like that. But the entire picture is not available right now. One thing is for sure, however, in the court of public opinion, Ben Schneider is victorious. He is doing very well there. Many people believe his accusations and discount the accusations against him. So they might say that Ben was 100% right. So every accusation he made was accurate and every accusation against him was inaccurate, or some type of compromise, right? Some area in the middle where, okay, Ben didn't behave perfectly, but most of his claims must be true. There's a continuum here. People feel differently, and you can place them at different points on this continuum as far as how they view Ben's behavior. But overwhelmingly, at least to people highly interested in the story, again, I think Ben appears to be winning in most ways, across most dimensions. He is enjoying a period of massive success and popularity. The question at this point becomes, how does this end, right? Flames that burn hot burn out quickly. Ben is not going to be able to keep this momentum forever. We've seen many stories come and go, hot topics, where everybody gets excited, and a few months later, they don't want to have anything introduced about that story. They're tired of it. So this is kind of a risk for Ben, right? He's in a situation where he kind of needs to make the most of his popularity or notoriety, however one wants to look at it. There are many ways the situation could resolve. Some would be bad for all the parties. Some would be good for a few of the parties. I don't think there is a way where everybody can win here. A lot of damage has been done to reputations, whether warranted or not, and recovery may not be a plausible option. One obvious way this case resolves is for all the parties to come to an agreement to dismiss their claims. All this mess of accusations can go away, and this could involve people maybe admitting some level of responsibility, apologizing, maybe monetary payments, or other terms. I think a settlement might be possible because even though BAM seems like they're really dug in, Ben Schneider doesn't really have much to lose as far as the monetary element. Like BAM has a lot more to lose than him. He can go to jail, he can have $1 million judgment entered against him, and it's just one man losing freedom. It's just one man losing money. So that's an incentive for BAM to find some type of settlement. They want to worry about their damages. What happens to Ben really doesn't matter. They're not going to collect enough money from him to restore all the damage they say they have. They can't recover all their losses from him. The problem with the settlement option is that most of Ben's supporters would probably disengage if he settled, but a small, enthusiastic group would persist. The momentum of this case would continue even if Ben tells people to stop. For instance, he has advised people to stop harassing franchisees, yet it appears as though not everyone has taken his advice. In reality, I don't think that Ben has any control over the most militant and enthusiastic fans. Again, there's momentum here. This case is moving. Ben can put his hand out and try to stop it, but I think it'll run right over him. So again, this serves to motivate BAM to continue to press forward with litigation. They could make the argument, they could come to believe that they need a definitive and complete victory over Ben to win in this situation. They have to have an itemized list of all the areas where they were correct, something that is verified through a trial. Like they want to be standing outside a courthouse talking about how Ben was found liable for defamation and interfering with their business and all that. That would be a great victory. It is in their best interest to crush Ben. They can't win the social media war, but they might be able to win the legal war. In the long run, BAM can recover from the damage if they can show that Ben behaved terribly and they didn't do much wrong. Ben is popular now, but over time, these types of cases get reinvestigated. People will start wondering about the original story. This actually happens quite a bit. People might say, well, maybe I should not have believed Ben so quickly. Maybe there is another side to the story. After the initial reaction, people become skeptical if that reaction was correct. That actually makes a good story in itself. So the story would no longer be Ben is a hero who exposed an evil corporation, but Ben is an example how a social media influencer can do a lot of damage to a company that really didn't do anything wrong. Maybe Ben wasn't right about everything after all. Maybe he wasn't right about any of it. So that kind of development could happen, and that would, of course, benefit BAM strongly. So playing the long game might make sense for them. Part of the skepticism, which may come in the future, could come about because BAM doesn't seem like the typical big corporation that people don't like. They are not manufacturing drugs. They're not manufacturing military-grade weapons for the government. They don't lend money to people. They don't invent cutting-edge and controversial technology. They buy Lego bricks from people and sell them to other people. Also, the alleged offenses that Ben has accused the company of seem a little obscure and mundane. People tend to get upset about corporate practices like predatory lending, charging too much for prescription medications, polluting the environment, things like that. Not mishandled consignment agreements for Lego bricks. I don't know if I've ever seen people protesting that particular alleged violation before this incident. That wasn't like a top 10 protest topic. Prior to this scandal, I'm not sure anybody really knew this could be a dispute. Some people didn't know what consignment agreements were. And now those same people are infuriated about the one that was entered into by Brian and Crystal, and then allegedly assumed in some way by BAM. This was not the straw that broke the camel's back as far as consignment agreement disputes. There was no camel. This is something that really was manufactured through the exposure and the excitement about this particular case. This is a one-time specialized alleged offense that has gained a lot of attention. So again, my point here is that BAM can probably recover in the long run if they win the lawsuit, whereas settling may not be in their best interest. Another key problem with BAM settling is that it sets a precedent. Ben Schneider is not special. There are many people just like him who are desperately trying to be successful on social media. They want to enjoy his notoriety, and Ben has handed them a roadmap to reach their dreams. He has showed them the routes to take to get to where he is. His strategy is to do things that are allegedly wrong to expose a greater alleged wrong. If BAM settled, every move they made from that point forward would be scrutinized forever by a large number of influencers. People would look for any reason to start the drama all over again, an excuse to resurrect a story that was long dead. You would see video titles containing phrases like, BAM did it again, look what they did now, they didn't learn anything, and the scandal is back in full force. People might be critical of BAM pushing this lawsuit, but I'm not sure they really have a choice. I don't know what's going to happen as far as how this will end. I think it is reasonable to believe that if it goes to court, it will be very expensive for all the parties. To defend the lawsuit that BAM has filed against Ben, he could easily spend $500,000, maybe even $1 million. At the end of it, he could lose the case. Maybe he loses $250,000, maybe $500,000, who knows? Either way, he will have to spend a lot of money. Ben has been very effective in generating revenue from this scandal. He's on fire right now, but interest will fade over time. This is why the best move for him is probably to somehow come to an agreement to settle this. I don't know if he will. Personality traits are relatively stable over time, and Ben has proven himself to be kind of antagonistic. So if he stays true to his personality, then he's going to keep poking the bear. And again, maybe he's right about some of it. Maybe some of his allegations are true. But either way, I think he will continue to antagonize. That's kind of his brand. Similarly, as far as the leadership at BAM, they are very offended by what Ben has done, and I don't really see that changing. I don't see that going away. Now, maybe they'll make a business decision and not react based on emotions, but in terms of the personality traits the leadership of that company has shown, they appear to want to see this through. They believe that they're right, and they want to see it through. So they are determined. Ben is determined, and they are determined. That's a recipe for going to court and not settling. Ben must also think about the criminal charges. He video recorded his behavior, and as I mentioned in my first video, it sure looks like he's guilty. He does maintain the presumption of innocence, and that is important to keep in mind. Now, he can claim that his civil rights were violated, and I think he has a decent case there. Ben might be able to leverage the alleged civil rights violations to dispose of the charges, but there's no guarantee of that. Again, kind of looking at the behavior of the parties, the American Fork Police Department seems pretty confident that they didn't do anything wrong. So they even released a video, like they're pretty sure. I think that it should be disconcerting to Ben that he's been charged with crimes. I think it's something he needs to take seriously. Again, he's the only party in this whole situation that I'm aware of who is facing criminal charges. Now moving to my next question. Did Ben expose a significant injustice in this case, one that was worth all the suffering he may now experience? So put another way, is this case really a big deal? Well, I think the initial alleged injustice was serious. A Lego collector not being properly compensated, right? A consignment agreement that was somehow violated. The problem is not the injustice. The problem is who is really to blame. Ben Schneider better hope that he's right about blaming BAM, Joshua, and Brandon, because it's possible that this was really the fault of Crystal. If Ben has been chasing the wrong target this entire time, this is going to blow up in his face. Many influencers are definitively taking sides in this battle. Almost all of them are taking Ben's side. That seems to be a popular tactic right now, a popular position. I remain skeptical. I want to see all the evidence. I believe that Ben has made a pretty good case against the American Fork Police Department. However, as far as the consignment dispute, I'm unconvinced. I also question the proportionality of the response if the situation was mishandled by, say, BAM. In the law, severity is conceptualized along a continuum. Stealing $100 is less serious than stealing $1 million. Driving 5 miles over the speed limit is less serious than reckless driving. The most severe punishment cannot apply to every single offense. Even if BAM did mishandle the consignment situation during the takeover of the franchise store, does that really make it the most evil corporation in the entire world? Is it possible that they are just a little evil? Furthermore, one can argue that their response has made them look worse than the original alleged offense. Like trying to cut off Ben's Patreon seems vindictive and supports this theory that they are concerned about him raising money. Maybe the takeaway here for companies like BAM has nothing to do with the management of consignment agreements. It has nothing to do about the level of control over franchisees or how a store is taken over. Maybe it's more about being polite when people ask you to resolve a problem. Polite and forthcoming with information. Cooperative. Everybody's recording everything these days, and who knows what will become popular on social media. An unkind word, a mocking tone, a false accusation, anything a company representative says might be the next hot topic. It might be generating millions of views. I do not believe that Ben has ushered in a new wave of investigative journalism, but he has given companies an incentive to be polite. That is my update on the case of Ben Schneider and Bricks and Minifigs. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.